Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Today, we are going to take a pretty deep dive into global wealth distribution.
Mhm.
Where is the money in the world right now as of March 2025? We've got some really interesting data from a couple of sources, and, it's painting a pretty complex picture.
Yeah, it really is. We've been looking at this analysis of wealth trends, and one factor that keeps popping up is artificial intelligence. So, really, what we want to get into is what are the big trends defining wealth distribution right now, and how might AI actually shift those trends going forward? It can feel like a lot of data to make sense of, so we're going to break it all down for you.
Okay, so let's jump right in. One of the I guess, most striking things from the data is that so much wealth is held by such a small group.
Mhm.
We're with the top 1% controlling 45% of global wealth.
Yeah, that's almost half of all the wealth in the world. And to really drive that home, in 2024 alone, billionaire wealth increased by $2.8 trillion. That's three times faster than the year before. So, there's clearly a trend toward even more wealth concentrating at the very top.
So what's driving this? Is it like just the overall economy doing well, or is there something else happening?
Well, the data points to financial assets playing a major role. The wealthiest households are seeing massive gains in their investments, while at the same time, many in the middle class are actually watching their savings dwindle.
That's a huge disparity. And this is where AI comes in, right?
Right, because AI-driven investment strategies are giving large corporations and, wealthy individuals even more of an advantage. So AI is actually amplifying the gap.
So we've got this rapid growth at the top, but what about the middle class? Our sources talk about this hollowing out, especially in developed economies. What exactly does that mean?
So it's more than just a shrinking middle class. It means that for those who are still in that middle income bracket, they're having a harder and harder time just staying there. Things like buying a home or saving for retirement, they are getting squeezed.
Squeezed how?
Well, the cost of essentials, right? Things like housing, healthcare, education, they're all going up. But wages for many in the middle class just aren't keeping pace. So it's getting harder and harder to build wealth, even to just maintain their standard of living.
Okay, so that's the picture in wealthier countries.
Yeah.
But what about emerging markets? We always hear about the growing middle class in those places. Is that still true?
Yeah, there are definitely projections that show a lot of growth in the middle class and emerging markets by 2034. But, our sources are highlighting some setbacks. Like right now, global economic instability and inflation are actually pushing a lot of people in the opposite direction.
And then there's poverty. We're talking about almost 3.6 billion people living on less than 6.85 a day. That's a lot of people. Yeah, and it hasn't changed much since 1990. It's pretty shocking.
Yeah, it really underscores just how deeply rooted global inequality really is. And when we think about the rise of AI, there is a real risk that, that widespread automation could push even more people into poverty, especially if their jobs are replaced by machines. At the same time, the people who have the skills to work with AI are seeing their salaries increase. So, just adding another layer to this polarization.
To give everyone a really clear picture of how big this divide is, our sources use the example of Canada. In Canada, the richest 20% hold 68% of the total wealth. The bottom 40% own just 2.8%.
Yeah, that's a pretty stark contrast. It's a lot of pressure on those lower and middle income households, not just in Canada, but globally. It's not always just about how much money you make, it's about how much wealth you're able to build over time. And when costs are rising and debt is piling up, it's really tough to get ahead.
So far, it's been, kind of a bleak picture, but there's another angle our sources bring up. They talk about how artificial intelligence could actually be a game changer, especially for smaller businesses.
Yeah, AI is not just a potential driver of inequality, it might also be able to level the playing field in some ways. What's interesting is that a lot of small businesses are starting to use AI in a really big way. Like they're using it to streamline their operations, improve customer experience, and even to help them innovate.
How is this actually working? What kind of AI tools are we talking about?
Well, one of the biggest things is that AI is becoming more accessible and affordable for small businesses. There are AI tools for financial management, for marketing, even for product development. So this lets them compete with larger corporations in ways they couldn't before.
And there seemed to be a lot of excitement around this, especially among minority-owned businesses and those who are early adopters of AI.
Absolutely. They see AI as a way to overcome some of the disadvantages they've faced, things like labor shortages, and ultimately it helps them compete and grow.
So it's not just about individual businesses, right? The whole economy could be impacted if AI becomes more widely available.
Exactly. While big tech companies are driving a lot of the development in AI, these new generative AI tools are giving smaller businesses a chance to get in the game. That could lead to a shift in wealth distribution, with smaller companies gaining more ground.
Can you give us some concrete examples of how entrepreneurs are using AI?
Yeah, for sure. We're seeing things like predictive analytics to understand market trends and customer behavior. We're also seeing more personalized marketing campaigns, which are way more efficient and effective. And in terms of finance, AI can help with things like cash flow management and finding ways to cut costs. Each of these may seem small, but together they can really give small businesses a competitive edge.
So we've got these two trends happening at the same time: growing wealth inequality and the potential for AI to disrupt the status quo. How do we make sense of this?
When you step back and look at the big picture, it's clear that there are systemic factors driving inequality. Things like wage stagnation, how we tax the ultra wealthy, and policies that tend to benefit those who already have capital. But AI adds a whole new layer of complexity. It could shake things up, especially by giving smaller businesses more power.
But our sources also warn that AI could make things worse, right? Especially if it's not implemented thoughtfully.
Definitely. AI is a powerful tool, and it could exacerbate existing inequalities if we're not careful. If access to AI technology in education isn't widely available, then the gap could widen. That's why our sources mention things like progressive taxation and basic income programs as ways to address those inequalities as AI becomes more prevalent.
It sounds like whether or not AI helps to create a more equitable distribution of wealth really depends on how smaller companies utilize it.
Yeah, that's really the key takeaway. It's not a given, but it's certainly possible. So for our listeners, I think the important things to remember are wealth is becoming increasingly concentrated at the top. The middle class is struggling, and poverty is a persistent global problem. But AI has the potential to change things. It could make things worse, or if smaller businesses use it strategically, it could lead to a more balanced distribution of wealth.
So as a final thought, as AI keeps advancing at this breakneck speed, what strategies and policy changes do you think are most important to ensure that its transformative power leads to a more equitable future and not just deepen the inequalities we see today? It's a big question that will impact all of us. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.